or good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on when this finds you. Well, this will be my fourth attempt at recording this video. Um, Try to do something that I hadn't done in a long time, and that's record it during the daytime hours. And the first time I recorded it, my phone had been quiet all day, and the phone rang. So I stopped it and took care of that call and started recording again a little bit later. Then the doorbell rings. So I stopped it again and addressed the gentleman at the door. And I said, okay, I should be through for the day. So I go back and the phone rings again. And I said, well, I guess I better stick to just recording uh, late at night like I normally do. I don't record them as late as I used to, like 2, 3, 4 in the morning. But it still gives me a better chance to get them recorded with no interruptions late at night. Like I said, it's only about two people for the most part that are gonna be in communication with me late at night. And if I've talked to them or early in the day or communicated with them recently, I normally don't have to worry about them calling late at night. And in most cases, I'll get a text message beforehand anyway. But I'm just babbling. But recently there was an economic blackout or boycott, whatever you want to call it. And whether you participated or not, I don't care. It doesn't bother me one way or another. In my book, But Hey, What Do I Know? Available at Amazon, Barnes& and Noble, and through me, Myron Jones at gmail.com, I wrote about something called a whirling disease, WHIRLING disease. And what it is, it's when bacteria are at the bottom of muddy lake beds, muddy ponds, or muddy seas or something like that. And they can get inside a fish. Normally it's a salmon or trout, I believe. I mean, I like me some trout. I'm not too much of a fan of salmon, but I like some trout. And then once the bacteria enters the fish, it becomes an infection and starts to disrupt the life cycle of the fish. And at that point, the fish can only swim in circles until it dies because it can no longer search for food. And why did I bring that up? I put it in a book for a reason, and I'm mentioning it here for a reason. This is us as Black Americans. We've been infected by a bacterium, and we just keep swimming around in circles every time somebody else gives us marching orders. Some weeks back, Al Sharpton and a group went into a Costco with the cameras rolling. Of course, the cameras always got to be rolling. And, you know, somebody I went to high school with, ran track with, I mentioned something about Al Sharpton. And she said, well, I didn't see, I follow Al on Twitter, and, I didn't see him say nothing about the economic black. Oh, okay, whatever, I didn't even, okay, whatever, I've learned not to provide people with all the information they're looking for. They're going to have to go look for it themselves a lot of times. You get it in my videos, or you can get it on some social media posts if I got them now. But other than that, I'm not providing too much information. I think when I put a video out, I give a lot of information anyway. It's up to the individual to determine what they're going to do with it. But we've been infected. And, all I know, my wife doesn't, is still on me about using the word, but I still haven't found one. We're stupid as a people. Al Sharpton has been profiting off of black misery for years, and we haven't figured it out yet. Y'all remember Tawana Bradley back in the 90s? And just so you know, the economic blackout was designated by a white guy named John Schwartz. And Schwartz, that's all I'm going to say. We are still letting white people tell us what to get excited and upset about. But that's typical. A white person used the black face to mobilize us. Now, before I get into my topic, I want to tell you something from a biblical perspective. What a surprise, huh? If we kept the Sabbath like we're supposed to, we would have an economic blackout every Friday and Saturday anyway. Over in Exodus 16, 29, it says we're not supposed to even leave our home on the seventh day, on the Sabbath day. Guess what the seventh day is? Saturday. Guess when you start observing the Sabbath? From dawn Friday to dawn Saturday. We're not supposed to do any work on the Sabbath. We're not supposed to cut our yards on the Sabbath. We're not supposed to work in gardens on the Sabbath. We're not supposed to cook on the Sabbath. We're not supposed to wash cars on the Sabbath. We're not even supposed to get our hair cut or get fingernails done on the Sabbath. We're not supposed to do any trapping. Now, trapping means catching food. So, based on our current society, grocery shopping qualifies as trapping, getting food to eat. Then further along in Exodus, I believe, chapter 35, 3, I think it says something to the effect that we're not even supposed to turn fire on in our homes that day. Don't argue with me. You take it up with Yah. It is literally supposed to be a day of rest. Now, we're so far off everything that we don't really know. And when somebody starts trying to bring us back to what we're supposed to be, then we think that person is the one with the problem. Just like one day last week on my social media profile, I posted something about abortion. And this female with her theology degree gonna tell me, no uterus, keep your comments to yourself. You heard me say female with a theology degree. And I told her it impacts me too. See, that's just like um, when the KKK was running rampant back in the early 20th century. None of us were living for the most part. There's still a few out there, but none of us were living. And then because we're black, we're going to say something about what the KKK did to our ancestors back then. Well, if she's going to tell me because I don't have a uterus to keep my opinion to myself, well, you wasn't living when the KKK was doing that to your ancestors, so shut your mouth. But then again, I made another post from a black woman, and a black woman asks, how is it not red rum, turn red rum around, when a woman deletes her baby in the womb, but if a man deletes that woman and she's pregnant, he gets charged with double red rum. Now, black woman said that, and this black theology female gonna come on my post and say, you need to stop. Please stop. And me being me and very respectful, if I said no. So, but that ain't nothing to do with that. I just thought about that for the moment. But what did I stop? What was I? Oh, I talked about being a day of rest. A Gentile told me that her day of rest is on Sunday when I brought it to her attention. And I respect it. I believe she respects me. But I'm not going to argue with it. Everything I tell you, if you're going to keep doing what you're doing, that's your business. I'm not telling anybody to change what they're doing. It's just hard for me to stay in the same thing when I started learning that everything I was taught was wrong. But you know why we don't properly observe the Sabbath like we're supposed to? Because of Gentiles. Gentiles have changed practically everything in the Bible to fit their own narratives. Go ask your pastor why he has church service on Sunday and just listen. It doesn't matter if he's black or white or any other ethnicity. Just listen to the lie he's going to tell you. Who started your seminaries? Gentiles. Who told you the law was done away with? Gentiles. Who told you that God was three people? Gentile. Who taught that the diabolical Christian church replaced Israel? Gentiles. Who told you that all the Hebrews are dead? Gentiles. Who is behind the slave trade? Gentiles. Who is behind the NAACP? Gentiles. Who is behind the National Urban League? Gentiles. Who is behind the unions on jobs? Gentiles. Who is behind the Board of Education? Gentiles. Who was behind the Civil Rights Movement? Gentiles. Who's behind the Black Lives Matter movement? Gentiles. Who's behind the LGBT movement? Gentiles. Who is behind the current medical system? Gentiles. Who is behind the current justice system? Gentiles. Who created the voting system in this country? Gentiles. So, who do you think is behind the current economic blackout? Now, if you listen to the video I released before this one on, when was that? Was that March 3rd, I believe? I talk about the percentages of a whole lot of industries in this country. Black people ain't controlling nothing. But every time you look at the news and social media and everything, according to Gentiles, black people are the reason for everything going wrong in this country and around the world. I recently saw that rap group, a group I listened to back in the 90s, Tribe Called Quest, receives no royalty payments for their music. A Gentile gets 100% of their royalties. But y'all want to talk about showing big corporations, y'all mean business. Really? How many of you went to the stores on Thursday and stocked up so you could show your fake black solidarity on Friday? How many of you went to the store on Saturday or Sunday to buy those groceries you needed for your family? How many of you went to work on Friday? How many of you went through a drive-through restaurant to eat lunch on your break at work on Friday? How many of you went out to a romantic or social dinner on Friday night or went to see a movie on Friday night? How many of you put gas in your vehicle on Friday? Come on, talk to me. Now, why did I ask these questions? Because in the economic blackout, they gave you specific rules. They literally said, buy everything you need before Friday. Let me tell you something. If you follow that plan, you gave them the same money on another day that you were going to give them anyway. Oh, yeah, you really showed them, didn't you? What you said is to this company, I'm going to punish your company by giving you my money a few days early to show you that I mean business and stand on nothing. Another part of the blackout was this, to buy only necessary things like food, medicine, and emergency supplies on Friday if you needed to. But see, the very first plank in the plan said no purchases at all on February 28th. See, the word black out is what got y'all's attention because black was in the title. It had nothing to do with black people. Swartz created a group called the People's Union, and then he created a GoFundMe page which raised thousands of dollars. Man, we stupid. He raising money. y'all sitting there tripping, thinking y'all done did something. A white guy made a huge profit while y'all got caught up in an emotional stand. See, we're so easily misled. White liberal women started promoting the idea of the blackout, and y'all just caught wind of it and took off. I thought y'all didn't even like Karens. Some of you were out there trying to shame black people who know how to think for themselves, who said they will not participate in white propaganda. And as I've stated many times, my wife doesn't like when I use the word stupid. But when she heard about the blackout, she said, are we that stupid? See, a lot of celebrities were endorsing the event, while the people that work for them had to do their shopping. See, there are several other blackout events going on through July 4th. See, I'm not going to give you the exact dates because I don't plan on participating anyway. Some of the boycotts are for specific companies and some are for specific brands. I saw where someone said, we're going to show them like our ancestors did with the Montgomery bus boycott. Oh, really? Do y'all realize the Montgomery bus boycott lasted for almost a year? Are you truly prepared to boycott all of these companies for a year? Our ancestors walked to work during this period. They stood on what they said. But even then, it was nothing more than a symbolic gesture because we had been discriminated against in public transportation for decades, long before Rosa Parks was propped up with the NAACP behind her pushing the agenda. But anyway, when are your black women going to boycott the hair stores that sell you fake hair that contains formaldehyde, carcinogens, toxic chemicals, and endocrine disruptors? Y'all realize that synthetic hair can cause cancer because of all the toxins? Why do you think a lot of our black women have the hair issues they have? When are y'all going to boycott the failing schools in our neighborhoods? You know, these folks propping up the blackout said, find small businesses to buy from. Well, why did you have to wait for somebody to tell you to do that? You could have made that decision long before now. I remember reading a book years ago, this black couple, I think the title of the book was Our Black Year or something like that, where they spent 12 months searching out and finding and supporting black businesses only. But why y'all had to wait for somebody to tell y'all to do that? See, we seem to have to always wait for somebody to give us permission to do something before we think it's a good idea. Why are we always the only group of people who need to be led? Why are we the only group that ever has leaders? Who told you a black person was a leader of black people? See, my wife and I, we've been using and patronizing small black business owners for years. It's not something, I blab to everybody, but I do refer. The HVAC company I use is black owned. I give them referrals. And in return, they support me in one of my business endeavors. They're black owned, but they service anyone who calls them. The plumbing company I use is black owned. Now it was a dad and a brother, and now the dad is taking his son under his wing so he can turn it over with him because it's up in age now. But they service anyone as well. They do contracts with the city of Houston and all of that. My grandmother worked for them for years. Even when she passed on, was it a little bit over 7 years, about 7.5 years ago, she was still working with them part time. And but even though she's passed on, I still use them and give them referrals. The shop that I get my wife's car serviced at is black owned. I've also been using him for years. I appreciate his work so much that I also sent my grandmother to him when she was living because she had the same manufacturer vehicle that I have. She didn't have the same model I had. She had car was just the same manufacturer. I've told others about him with the same manufacturer brand, and for whatever reason, they would rather use the dealership. Guess what? He used to work for the dealership that they go to for almost 20 years. But the dealership is white owned, so I guess how we think it has more credibility in our minds as a people. When Hurricane Beryl hit back in July, um, our home suffered some damage, some severe damage. We had the opportunity to use a national company to do the work. Guess who we used? A small black owned businessman. Guess what? He did some things for us that were not even in our contract. He told me he loves to go above and beyond to make sure his customers are happy. And, and if he does a good enough job, give him referrals. And see, how many of you even think like that? When the pandemic was running wild, I knew black businesses were suffering in many cases because they're small businesses. My wife's hairdresser was not getting as much business because, they put that fear in your heart. Don't go see nobody. But they put that fear in your heart. And so my wife was still going to see a hairdresser. And guess what my wife did? Every time she went to see her, she gave her extra money. And even when she didn't go see her, she even would put a little extra in the mail for her when she didn't have an appointment. See, I can do minor electrical work around my home, but I knew the black owned small businessman was struggling after talking with him. So I called him and I asked him, could he come do some things? I didn't need him to do it. I could have did it myself, but I knew his business was suffering. My parents used them when I was growing up, so I continued to use them over years. I've even given him referrals. I've had several black yard men, but sadly, I've had to get rid of every last one of them. The biggest issue I've had with each and every one of them, they were not showing up like we agreed upon. Make no mistake, and I'll never take this from them. They did excellent work when they showed up, and I hated to get rid of them. But when you and I make an agreement for you to show up every 2 weeks, and on average you show up every 4 weeks, we got a problem. There were actually times when there would be 8 to 9 weeks in between cuttings. See, one of the problems we as a people have is we feel when we get comfortable with one another, we can use the homeboy homegirl thing to do anything we want and nothing will be said, and we're just supposed to accept it because we black. That's the way we think. One of the guys even told me he had to cut his yards in a certain part of town first. Do I need to tell you who lived in that part of town? I like to experiment with things. So even as a little kid, I would sit there and try to plant trees and do stuff like that. And it, 8, 9, 10 years old, I didn't know nothing about doing it. So I didn't know how often to water that stuff or none of that stuff. So, but I still like to tinker with stuff and mess around with stuff. So one time I took apple seed and put it in one of them little solo cups of soil just to see what would happen. Because now I know you need 2 apple trees to bear fruit. So I didn't care. I was just trying something. I was just experimenting. And so I grew the seed, you know, into a small seedling. Then what they call up potted, put it in a bigger pot. And then once it grew to about 4 feet tall, I planted it in my backyard. And if it bore fruit, fine. If it didn't, I would at least have a shade tree. Either way, I didn't care. I was just trying to see what would happen. One of the black yard men ran over it with his riding lawnmower. He didn't even mention it, and he stuck the shredded trunk back into the hole. I fired him that day. A friend called me one day. Uh, we were teammates and classmates in high school football. And he said, "Hey, man, I got a lot of pecan tree seedlings. You want one?" I said, "Yeah." And, it's not, I mean, my wife loves pecans. I like the wood for barbecuing. I said, "Yeah." And I went by his house and got it. And it was one of those solo cups. He told me how to nurture it. I grew it in about 4 feet, planted it in my backyard. Well, the yard man at this time had just left, so the yard's freshly cut. So I know he's supposed to be back in 2 weeks. And so I said, well, it's big enough, the yard's cut, and by the time he comes back, he'll still see it. And so I planted it in the backyard. Well, for 9 weeks, the yard man didn't show up. My grass is very tall because over the years I've had dogs. I don't have, now, but I've had dogs, so my yards have always had fresh fertilizer. And so when I say my grass gets tall, it gets tall if it's not cut. So for 9 weeks, this dude didn't show up. And when he showed up to cut it, he ran over the pecan tree. He came, knocked on my door, and asked me, did I have a tree in the backyard? I said, yeah. He said, well, I accidentally cut it down because I thought it was a weed. And I told him, I said, if you come like you're supposed to, that wouldn't have been an issue. He was the one who had the customers in another part of town. But, I did keep him a little longer because at least I felt he was at least man enough to admit he made a mistake. I try real hard to give our people a lot of grace, but sometimes it just doesn't work out. However, I still use a small businessman to cut my yard. He's just not black. There's a farmer's market my wife and I like to use. It's a small business. There used to be a guy that sold watermelons on a corner lot near our home. Now he's no longer there because they built a gas station and Burger King on that corner. So guess what happens? We don't buy watermelon from the store. Every now and then we might get one, but we try not to. Um, Last summer was the first time this guy wasn't fully able to sell at that corner spot. So we didn't have watermelon at all. And, it was also a bad summer down here, a lot of heat, no rain. So it was a bad year for watermelon farmers. But, guess who, we normally try to do, I have a friend who's from East Texas, lives in this area now. And periodically he goes back home to visit. And when he goes in the summer, he'll call and ask, hey, uh, y'all want a watermelon? I'm going home. Y'all want a watermelon? And yeah, and he buys them from a guy near his hometown who sells them on the side of the road. And normally when you go to the small country towns and stuff like that, you don't have to pay transportation costs. See, a lot of that stuff get in the stores gets marked up. There's even a guy on the corner that was selling on the corner. He was even more expensive than the stores, and he said, he got them from California or somewhere. But I'd rather Texas watermelons anyway. But you want to show your support for black farmers? There's a website called blackfarmersindex.com. And if you go to this website, it will give you all of the small black farmers in your area up to 3 hours away. These farmers have produce, they have animals, they have herbs, and things like that. So if you're gonna stand on principle, stand on principle. If you're gonna stand on emotion, you ain't gonna stand for long. Let me know when black people going to do their own thing and stop telling me about stuff white people are goading us into. Let me know when we're serious. Will a boycott actually prove racism? Nope. There are no indicators to prove that the blackout worked on February 28th. Isn't it amazing that black people use social media platforms like X, formerly known as Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram to promote and spread the idea? Y'all call for economic boycott of companies that got rid of DEI programs that never benefited black people anyway, but y'all talked about a boycott on platforms that don't have DEI programs that benefit black people. So y'all protested DEI, huh? No, you didn't. You protested for white women, who are the biggest benefactors of DEI programs. 76.1% of DEI positions go to whites. 7.8% of DEI positions go to Hispanics. 7.7% of DEI positions go to Asians. And 3.8% of DEI positions go to black people. Y'all want to boycott corporations, but a lot of y'all were in bed with big pharma and big medicine just 3-4 years ago. Y'all were fine with corporate America abusing and exploiting people. Y'all were fine with people losing employment because they wouldn't cater to corporate America. Y'all were in line with corporate America that the people now you want to support your boycott efforts are the same ones you shamed and ostracized just 3-4 years ago so you could support big business. What changed? Y'all are so fickle. Y'all just fickle. I mean, y'all are so fickle that if another pandemic comes along, you same people are going to once again get in line with corporate America and work very hard to shame and ostracize people again. See, it goes along with something I wrote in the book, but hey, what do I know? Available at Amazon, Barnes and Noble, Myron Jones at Gmail. Y'all run away from the black community to live among whites. And when whites show you who they've always been and kick you in the teeth, you want to run to the hood for black support until you get the blessings of white America again. Then once you get that support or the blessings, you abandon the hood again until you need the hood again. Let me tell you something. Y'all are boycotting all of these companies who have never opened a store in the black community. And since they never opened them in our communities, y'all move closer to them in order to have access to their amenities. You are boycotting the companies in the communities you move to. Make that make sense. See, the blackout slash boycott is nothing but a placebo effect. But that goes back to what I said earlier. No buying on Friday. Buy in advance. No buying on Friday. Buy only essentials on Friday if necessary. Why would I side with people who can't even put a good plan together and stick to what they say they believe? That's like saying, let me try to pull something out. It's like saying, don't marry your wife unless you do it before a certain day. Don't marry your wife unless it's absolutely necessary because you're gonna show her you in charge. I know that's a terrible analogy, but it was all I could think of at the moment. But at the end of the day, you are still going to marry her. Where was the economic blackout when inflation was growing exponentially? Where was the economic blackout when you had to pay outrageous egg prices? And that's still going on right now, I believe. Where was the economic blackout years ago when gas was at $5 a gallon? Where was the economic blackout when a bag of uncooked chicken wings at Sam's Club went from $18 to $35 during the pandemic? And the reason I know that because that's used to be where me and my wife used to always buy our chicken wings from. Where is the economic blackout on these outrageous prices on medicine? See, stand on something other than emotion. Stand on principle. Stop expecting people to boycott what you want them to boycott. Boycott things that matter. Y'all mad at corporations now. Y'all haven't been mad at them before now? Why are you boycotting now? You know why you boycotting now? Because you were told to boycott now. That's why you're doing it. Start thinking for yourself. Why don't you protest the outrageous culture of tipping that's got out of hand since the pandemic? Now, a lot of these people expect you to give a 30% tip when you eat out. I saw one waitress say, if you can't afford a 30% tip, you need to stay home. Well, if you think someone other than your employer should sustain you economically, you might need to change professions. Why aren't people having an economic blackout for these people that feel they're underpaid? Y'all won't boycott restaurant pay though, because then the price of eating out will substantially increase and then force a restaurant to close down, and then you can't enjoy eating out. Y'all doing economic blackouts and boycotts, but I ain't never saw y'all boycott the NFL or the NBA. All y'all was standing with Colin Kaepernick, but y'all never boycotted the NFL. But y'all standing with Colin, but y'all ain't boycotting the NFL. Y'all doing blackouts and boycotts. But y'all won't boycott your black pastors and churches who have also exploited black people for billions of dollars and done nothing to help uplift black America. Then they take your dollars that you just put in a collection plate yesterday and they hand it to white America, who in return will not give black people loans at the same rates of any other culture. Now, on a side note, speaking of that, black pastor, that's what black pastor say he stands with Ukrainian president because the Russian president is a madman. Yeah, I don't stand with none of them. I stand with my family. I stand with my closest friends. I stand with my neighbors who look out for me like I look out for them. That's who I stand with. I don't have time to worry about how Europeans attack each other. But this black pastor's so conditioned that he can't even recognize it. Y'all boycotting corporate America, but you won't boycott the black politicians who continue to sell you snake oil. Your black politicians stand up and fight for immigrants. Your black politicians stand up and fight for LGBT. Your black politicians stand up and fight for transgenders. Your black politicians stand up and fight for men to participate in women's sport. The female politician out of the DFW area here in Texas that black people thought was so big and bad says she stands with Mexico and Canada before she stands with the U.S. while she collects that paycheck from the American taxpayer, which includes you, black people. She is not even willing to stand with black people. She stands with Mexico and Canada. Well, why don't she move to Mexico or Canada? What do your politicians do for you other than pay lip service? When are y'all going to boycott them and stop voting for them? That's how you boycott them. Don't vote for them. Let the people they support vote for them. Now, On February 28th, if you had a doctor's appointment, did you cancel that appointment or did you go? See, y'all ain't serious about boycotting things. Y'all ain't serious about boycotting people and companies that exploit you. Y'all don't want to act like you're doing something good. I remember back when the Trayvon Martin situation happened. I saw all these black people on social media. I'm going down to Florida. You do what? What you gonna do? Stand around with the rest of the people and just look. While some black so-called leader holds up a megaphone and tell y'all what the plan is. Y'all don't want to act like y'all doing something good. DemocratsAbroad.org gave you a list of marching orders of who not to support. You can't make this stuff up. Y'all keep wanting to make things political. Everything has always been economic, which is why Kamala lost. Why is it Democrats keep mobilizing you as black people to do their bidding? You know why? Because they know you loyal to your master, and that's why they keep doing it. Democrats have not done anything for blacks, period. Yet they keep calling on blacks to work on their behalf. But they went to bat for illegal immigrants. And they want you to stand with illegal immigrants. But Obama deported immigrants. Clinton deported immigrants. Biden deporting immigrants. Then Democrats told you Trump didn't care about immigrants. Man, look at you. Man, every time I think there's a real hope, every time I think there's a real hope, y'all don't let me down to remind me that as long as y'all are breathing, y'all can easily be manipulated. One of my homegirls up on the East Coast texted me the other day, and she said, "Myron," she said, I'm really, really losing faith in our people." She said, "Every time I try to talk to one of them, just in conversation," she said, "all I hear is conditioning and indoctrination." She said, "And it's not, nothing is resonating, nothing is getting through." And she said, "I sure wish you and your wife lived closer to me and my husband." She said, "Because at least I'll have somebody to talk to that's close to me that have some sense." And she didn't say it in those exact words, but that's what it boils down to. See, time for patty cake is over. Y'all need some shock therapy. It's like I made a post on social media one day. I said, since I've been on this platform, everything I posted has been to either make you laugh or make you think. I've never posted anything to make you comfortable. And I'm still not going to make you comfortable. I don't care if this video made you uncomfortable. Y'all need some shock therapy. Y'all need some tough love. Some of y'all need to be smacked against the head a few times. Y'all really want to show your $1 trillion economic power? Start patronizing black-owned business in your community first. I see large companies, service vehicles all throughout my neighborhood on a regular basis that are not black-owned. But I thought we wanted to be pro-black in our spending. These companies might miss your black dollars, but instead of catering to you and seeing what they can do to keep you as a customer, they'll just market to every other community and continue to exclude you. Now, this was supposed to be a real quick video, but my mind started running and processing while I talked. But about 20 years ago, I read an article, and it's been archived in the Wayback Machine. And in that article, the question was asked, if blacks win, who loses? I'll talk to you later.